I was 6 years old, I got lost in a mall. Using my stellar 6-year-old brain, I figured that my dad and sister would have to go back out to the car eventually. So I stepped out into a parking lot, into a sea of cars without the first clue where ours was. The half hour that followed was probably one of the most defining of my life. I was 6, I knew about stranger danger, but when a man in a pickup truck pulled up and asked if I needed help finding my car, I got in. Fast forward 30 years to when my then 4th grade daughter comes home and tells me 2 boys in her class found the worst swear word in the word search that day, the R word. The R word. And then she says, "Mom, what does rape mean?" For a moment, I was paralyzed. But then I have this policy of always answering my kids' questions the best I can. So I took a deep breath and I said, "It's when someone touches a person's vagina or penis in a way that they don't want, and they don't give them the choice to say no." Afterwards, as I was watching her play in our backyard, my biggest fear wasn't that she would one day find out about my own experience with sexual violence. My biggest fear was that I wouldn't be able to show her enough healthy examples of positive sexuality so that my experience didn't also alter her life. The first few times I talked to high school students about sexual assault in their classrooms, when we got to the Q&A part of the session, I was inundated with what I call the "does that count" question. Well, what if she and I were both drinking? Does that count? Or, well, what if she said yes, but then in the middle she changed her mind? Does that count? Or, well, what if neither of us remembered it the next day? After about my 3rd one of these, I realized that something was very, very wrong. So I said, you know what, let's reframe this. Let's take the legality of this aside, and then let's look at this from our own values. Do you want to have sex with someone who doesn't remember it the next day? Do you want to not remember it the next day? Do you want to be someone's regret or someone's "I did it just so I could get out of there"? Or wouldn't you rather be someone's enthusiastic yes? With this, the entire conversation changed. It got much more open, much more honest, much more authentic, much more vulnerable. It turns out that initially the thing that was wrong was me. I was giving these kids a map and pointing out all the scary and dangerous places and forgetting to talk about the wonderful places, the amazing places, the awkward places, the beautiful places. It was time to reframe this whole conversation. We are living in a world that uses shame as a shield, and it's not working. By only talking to our kids about the dangers of sexual violence, we are leaving girls feeling afraid and boys feeling indicted. We need to give our kids the chance to explore their own sexual curiosity, and we need to guide them through this very complicated modern sexual world. We need to try transparency and honesty and non-judgment and vulnerability, but we keep messing this up. We put sex in this category of risky behaviors like vaping and texting while driving and sniffing glue instead of something that many of us do throughout the course of our lifespan. Further, we are failing to give our kids a language around consent. We are not helping them develop a voice to unapologetically own their no and enthusiastically declare their yes. So, how do we do this? Well, the first thing is we need to create an understanding in small children around consent. It needs to start young. It needs to start right away. They need to know about good touch and bad touch. They need to know that their bodies are their own to make decisions about, and they need to know that we are listening to them. So what does this mean? Well, maybe it means that when you bring your child to a big family party, you don't mandate that they hug and kiss every single person in the room. Maybe if they say, "Oh, Aunt Martha wears way too much perfume," you allow that no, you honor it. In schools, if it's not a safety issue, maybe it means that we don't insist on holding hands with the person next to us in a circle? What kind of message are we sending kids if we tell them, your bodies are your own to make a decision about, but you have to hold the next person's hand because that's the nice thing? This is a mixed message, and it's not good for kids. The other thing is we need to give kids the opportunity to say yes. So in my house, that might look like this. Hey, buddy, you look kind of sad. Could you use a hug? Yes, Mom. Yes, yes. Second thing, we need to be advocates for comprehensive sexual education in our schools. That means positive representation of LGBTQI youth. That means information about birth control. That means instructions on how to work birth control. That means information about STIs. According to the Guttmacher Institute, since 2006, fully 28% of girls and 35% of boys have received abstinence-only sex education in school. That number is appalling to me and absolutely unnecessary. If you cannot be an advocate, if you cannot make sex ed happen in your schools, then you need to make it happen in your communities or in your places of worship, and always, always be having these conversations in your own home. Third thing, you need to acknowledge that there is not just one sex talk. We don't get to have our 5-year-old, the birds and the bees, where do babies come from, and call us good. You're not good. This is an ongoing conversation, and you need to continue with the conversation in every opportunity that you have. So that might mean that when you're driving to school and your 11-year-old in the back hears the morning DJ say something about porn, as apparently morning DJs are wont to do, and he says, "Hey, Mom, what's porn?" You could turn off the radio and distract him with a discussion about dessert, or you could answer the question. You don't have to give a full treatise on sex workers' rights, but you could answer the one question that is being asked and allow him to ask another one. That's honesty. The nice thing about this ongoing conversation is if you muddle it the first time, you'll get a chance to do it again. A few years ago, my daughter asked me how exactly condoms worked. So I got out my pad of paper and my pencil, and I drew this large, awkward cactus-looking thing. And she said, okay, thanks, Mom. And it was a total disaster. I'm the worst drawer ever. I have no art skills at all. So later on, I'm talking to my community of friends about this, and I say, oh, yeah, it was such a mess. And they say, Krista, don't you know about the tube sock method? The tube sock method? I did not know about this. Do you all know about the tube sock? Well, here we go. The tube sock method. How to put a condom on. Voila. Fourth thing, we need to be as open and non-judgmental in these conversations with our kids as possible. We need to acknowledge that we are learning too. We are not the captains of the ship who know everything. We are just learning as much as they are. This makes you a person who is safe to talk to. And you want with your kids. You want to be a safe person that they'll talk to. So if they tell you, oh, hey, Mom, I have this crush, instead of assuming a gender bias, say, oh, really? Well, what are they like? What do you like about them? Because you've opened a door. Similarly, if they tell you that their best friend is a non-binary aro ace, you could say, oh, really? What's that? Or if you know what that is, you could say, oh, well, what do you think that means? What does that mean to you? You see, this is how we open the conversation. This is how it keeps going. It's not yes or no. It's wide open. Finally, I would like to acknowledge that I do understand that sometimes it's uncomfortable to talk about sex. That sometimes it's awkward, and sometimes it goes really right, and sometimes it goes really wrong. A few months ago, I had my 14-year-old son in the car with me, and it was just the two of us, and this never happens. There's usually one other kid somewhere. So I thought, I'm going to take this opportunity. And I turned to him and I said, hey, buddy, I just want you to know that if you have a wet dream, it's totally normal. It's very common. This happens to adolescent boys all the time. It is not a big deal at all. Just, you should let me know, because then I can make sure we get the laundry done so it's not a big sticky mess up there for 2 weeks. And he says, yeah, Mom, I know how to do my own laundry, but you could just pull over here on the side of the road. I'll walk the rest of the way to school. So you see, sometimes it goes wrong. And that's all right, as long as we're showing up. We show up so that we build the scaffolding, however rickety it can sometimes be, beneath our children, so that they can lead healthy sexual lives that are rooted in open communication and enthusiastic consent. Thank you.